who don't know me that well, I'm Gus Alaka. I'm the director of the Hurricane Research Division, and I'm the new science manager in HFIP, so kind of the new Frank. So I'm sitting next to him for most of the meeting, absorbing as much as I could. If he's online, thanks, Frank, and feel free to chime in at any time here along the way. So I am going to give the wrap up here and look ahead, and this is meant to be very interactive. So I just have a couple of thoughts on slides based on my takeaways from the HFIP Strategic Plan, which is still in a draft mode for 2025 to 2035. I'll make that clear, and then just some takeaways from issues that we saw, on the modeling side and a few other areas as well. So. I guess we can jump to the next piece here. Yeah, me, but really all of us, right? So I want this to be really interactive. All right, next slide. So here are some draft goals that are in the strategic plan for HFIP, and trying to make it as clear, right? These are draft; they could change a little bit in their wording and stuff, but I think the core principles here are pretty safe to share here. So I'm just going to sort of step through some of these, and I think in general, I want folks to feel free to give their feedback or drive some discussion from it. So maybe this slide is more informational, and then maybe on the next ones we'll have a little bit more back and forth, but feel free to chime in anytime. So I mean, the first one is pretty obvious. I mean, I think we all pretty much know this, right? But one of the main goals is obviously to complete the remaining and incomplete objectives in the 2017 Weather Act. That's one of our core goals. And from a data assimilation perspective, in the 5-year plan, I would say the 5-year goal, I think a couple of things that stand out is accelerating the transition to a new DA system, JEDI, and learning how to really integrate existing observing systems and fill observational gaps with new systems. I think this is really something we need to be thinking about, and there's a lot of great work that's being done on both sides there. Just to talk about the filling observational gaps with new systems this year through the field program, the Hurricane Field Program, some really great steps forward with SUAS technology, and as Joe Cione likes to say, instead of putting a toothpick through the donut, maybe taking more of a bite of the donut with some of these new systems that allow us to view the storm through different lenses, and obviously from the ocean side as well. I mean, a lot going on there that's really, really encouraging. Obviously the eye candy there is the sail drone, but I think really getting better at observing from above and below. The 3 here, so focus on coastal and overland forecasts with a focus on TC hazards. And again, we've been talking all about this stuff, but not just the max wind, but what are the damaging winds? It ties into some of the stuff we were just talking about, how important things like the radius of 64 knot winds are, and of course the gusts themselves, which are really driving a lot of the damage. Storm surge, freshwater flooding, tornadoes. I mean, this year is a prime example, unfortunately, of how all of these hazards can really come into focus for some of these landfalling storms. Incorporating verification of rainfall, pretty much. So learning how to sort of expand our model evaluation procedures beyond just some of our stereotypical track and intensity. We've had a lot of great conversation about thinking about structure as well, and I think that ties into really how do we take the next steps in terms of how we want to verify our models. It's great to make incremental and sometimes even large progress in track errors and intensity errors. Whether or not we're reaching that sort of point that can we really make a ton more improvement? I mean, NHC showed some great results from this last year where, some of their intensity errors are sitting at 5 days at 12 knots. I mean, are we really going to get a ton better than that? And if we get it down from 12 to 11, thinking back to the impacts, I mean, what does that really do for our end users at the end of the day? I'm not going to say yay or nay. I think we should always be striving to get better, but I think we also have to think about other ways that we want to really evaluate our models and learn how to improve them going forward. This sort of ties into the DA, and it's more in the 10-year timeline, I would say, but we really want to work on improving the analysis, right? HAFS is the hurricane analysis and forecast system, right? And I think we definitely have some great ideas in the short term. We also, with upgrading to a new DA system and stuff like that, but also in the longer term, like where do we want to go from here? And speaking from the HRD perspective, I mean, I think we really sit in a prime position to sort of bridge that gap between how should we be making optimal use of our observations pretty much in order to have the greatest impact on our initialization and analysis pretty much. And I added reanalysis in there because I really think that's a key part of what we sort of been talking about directly and indirectly here. A reanalysis, high resolution, is really going to offer us new ways to evaluate how our models are doing. And one of the things that pops up that, Wallace and I talk about all the time is thinking about things like the vortex tilt and how to actually communicate that, how the models are performing in that regard. We can do some anecdotal things. Okay, the model's showing a tilt, down shear, and is that realistic based on what we're seeing in reality? But we're not really verifying that broadly. And, I also, one of the things that comes to mind is some of the work being done in the Flight Plus data set as well as a great resource, right, where we do actually have in situ observations to start to answer some of those questions. But it's not for a really, really large sample. So I think a reanalysis would certainly, like a 30-year reanalysis, would certainly put us on the path to answer those questions more robustly. And then obviously leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning methods. Obviously, we're just scratching the surface, and there's been a lot of really, really great discussion about that. So I think that's another place where we can really focus here. So I'll stop there for a second in case there's any comments. Yeah, Jess. Yeah, there's more pages. That's not it. Yeah. There's like 50 more. No.
Jeff Shower, Tropical Program Manager for the Weather Service. I was just noting that I pulled up the Weather Act just because I was curious if you're hitting everything. And all of these are fantastic goals. And they touch on the main things that it actually says in the Weather Act that we were supposed to maintain. NOAA maintains a project to improve hurricane forecasting, including the prediction of rapid intensification and track of hurricanes. And I think we've definitely made strides in that since HFIP was conceived. And I think that the plans there should help keep moving that forward. The forecast and communication of storm surges from hurricanes. So there is something there for focus on coastal and overland forecasts, and improving those forecasts will help improve communication. It'll help improve what we're saying and the trust that we need to build. But the communication part, maybe not quite there. But the last one is risk communication research to create more effective watch and warning products. So that's the one thing that I challenge us before we finalize this plan, that we try to find something in there that can help with that point, not just because it's in the legislation, and also we just had an Office of Inspector General investigation into us asking, and they specifically called that out. But also because it's what we just talked about, like the end user, like and making the value, having the value of these forecasts go into like good decisions.
That's a great point. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
This list is Gus picking pieces out of our draft that's currently in review and does include a lot of the OIG stuff, because I was one of the people interviewed for it, so I have a lot of the information back when we started setting up designing this strategic plan. But thank you for pointing it out and telling us you suck, get it better, because ultimately we do. There's a lot of things that aren't being done. I know that's stupid language, but it's true. There's a lot of things we do suck at, and so we do need to get it better. And from the people that actually deal with the policy and the forecasters and the public is where it matters the most, because those are the parts that as a group HFIP hasn't done and doesn't know as well.
And I'm really glad you brought that up, Jess, just because, I mean, based on the discussion we had in the last hour, right? I mean, I think as I put these slides together a little bit earlier, and I was saying, oh, geez, if I ever put them together right now, I would have been more in that mindset. And again, it just goes to show that I think we all need to grow, especially on like the scientist side, we'll say, right? In terms of being more aware and having that more in our, go-tos in terms of really things that we need to focus on. So are there any other comments? I do have let's go to Feng Lin, but I'll just put up the next. We'll change here, and Feng Lin, you can talk, and then I'll mention too. Here's for you to read, and then we'll comment on it too. Some 6 key strategies.
Maybe I'm down to the weeds now. First is the ensemble strategy. What's the strategy? First, second, how to leverage the EMC, the grand plan in the future. Everything just in the global model and ensemble based.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the ensemble side, I mean, I think it's obviously something that we really need to figure out how we're going to do that with the limited resources, right? I mean, I think based on discussions that we've had, what I think operators really are looking for is a high resolution ensemble, right? And one of the things that I see is, or a question I'll ask is, how are we going to afford that? Like, how are we going to get that done? There's a big gap here in terms of what people want and what we're able to do, which is, it's not a very satisfying answer, but how do we get there? So, I mean, there's been some fantastic work being done in the cloud with the HAFS ensemble, which I list here. I also think, touching on point 6 here, if we're going to leverage AI, one of the areas we can leverage it is maybe to upscale our ensembles in a way that's more cost efficient to provide that probabilistic uncertainty information that, at a more cost effective, in a more cost effective way.
Yeah, okay. I think the point is probably need to also have an involvement from EMC, say what's the future of the GFS, what using AI-based or have a very high resolution analysis, every other sense should be just machine learning based, because we are talking about a 10-year plan.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that right now, but I definitely think it's something we need to explore. I mean, I think ultimately one of the points that you brought up a little bit earlier that resonated with me is, how are we going to, and it comes back to my comment about the affordability of an ensemble approach, right? I think we would be wise to find a way to sort of combine what we're trying to do with HERC, with the high resolution, HAFS ensemble there, and figure out if there is a way to actually, integrate our efforts with the GEFs. Right. And, there's some research and development, obviously, that needs to go into, how we would put moving nests into the global model effectively. But I think, we're on the right track in that regard. So I'd really like to see us maybe explore that a little bit more. And that's probably more in the 5 to 10 year area where we can actually, that's something that's more feasible. But I definitely think that's the right idea in terms of, instead of running these separate systems where one of them is extremely expensive, right? I think we're better off trying to combine our efforts.
Yeah, seems on the same page.
This is great. One of the things that we're going to be really hamstrung by is that, for better or worse, NHC drives the bus on model improvements by their focus on what we're supposed to be improving, right? So their focus right now is on track and intensity. Those are king, right? So if we are harnessed to Vmax and we're not really paying attention to, for example, structure that ties into hazards, then we're hamstrung. And I would say that we really, this is a provocative statement, but I would say that we really are at a point where the forecasts are getting pretty good. And I feel like we need NHC to drive this bus to say, okay, R34 or R whatever is as important as Vmax. People may disagree with me, but I think we're at that point where we need to start really evaluating that as something else that's as important.
Yeah, and I'll just respond quickly. I mean, I brought up earlier, in the previous slide about verification. It's here again. I think we need to be more creative, and maybe in some ways, some of the tools are already there, right? We already do verify things like R34, and maybe we're not focusing on them enough, right? Yeah, Jess.
I just want to say, by improving the 34, not wind radii, then in the structure, you're improving the watch and warning. So it's just part of the Weather Act, which is really who you should be answering to, even more than an HC. But yes, that.
Practically speaking, how the model upgrade cycle works is we answer to NHC. So if NHC starts driving the bus and say, no, we want this instead, that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't want to speak for all of NHC, but I will speak to the bus drivers when I get back to work. And but I think it's fair to say these metrics are right now as important for what we do. So R34, R50, R64, they tie into storm surge forecast. They tie into the hazard footprint, which causes the damage, which ties directly into our mission, kills people, etc. I think they are as important. Don't take that as a fact until I speak to the bus driver at home. But yeah.
You're getting a lot of thumbs up from Pablo.
But no, the time is now. I mean, they are as important. So
I would say 10 years ago, the VMAX forecasts were so terrible that, yeah, we needed an improvement a lot. but they're getting pretty good now, right? And so I think that allows us some flexibility to kind of move into these other lanes.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a couple of hands up online. I saw Dave's hand go up first. Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to make a comment that, and this probably isn't going to be too surprising, but we have a new administration coming in, and I wouldn't be surprised if people who know absolutely nothing about the weather and research are going to ask you why your research matters and why it shouldn't be cut. So I think that it would behoove everybody to really focus in on communication and making sure that you can talk about where your piece of the puzzle fits in to the overall objective of saving lives and property. I think NOAA is looked upon pretty favorably, but you can expect people to come in that know nothing about it, and you're going to have to really make it make sense to make sure that you continue with the good work that you're doing. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. I wanted to add something about, Jess brought up storm surge, and I think one of the things I would like to see is, as we go forward, using more dynamic model information to drive those surge forecasts. I think we're at a place right now where we can at least do it experimentally with the HAFS ensemble, but I think even with the operational models, in terms of providing some more, I would say, boundaries on what the ensemble looks like that's driving the surge models would be a great step forward. I also wanted to mention as well, I mean, it's number 4 here. These aren't in any particular order, but I mean, to Dave's point and Jess's and others, I mean, again, the improved risk communication is something really key that we're going to have to focus on. And, I put social science as like a very broad area there, but the second point, this forecast localization, that's what we've been talking about a lot in the last hour in terms of how do we actually translate these forecasts in a way that folks are seeing or they can understand what the potential impacts are in their community, which I think brings it a little bit more home to them, makes it a little bit more real as opposed to, just what's the maximum intensity. Lev, go ahead, and then we'll go to Stan online.
Yeah, this is Lev Looney with AOML, PhD in University of Miami. Kind of going back to what Wallace said, I think if the focus is equally important on R34, R64 as it is for VMAX. I don't think the observational community knows that. How often do you think of targeted observations to verify what R34 is or R64? It's always, can we get the most extreme? And that's the goal. Can we verify what the intensity is? That's almost always what the goal is of observations. And it's never, you try to target dropsons at VMAX or RMW, you never try to see where the R34 or 64 is with the dropson.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I think we can definitely improve our focus there, but I'll push back a little bit because, the way that flight tracks are drawn, in a way, we do go out, 100 nautical miles or so in order to capture that. Again, it's not perfect. There's a lot of room for improvement, but, we try to capture it, but are we doing a good enough job, right?
R34 we got a pretty good feel with satellite data, right? As you go further in, it's harder, right? So some of these are easier than others. So it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. Stan. You're muted.
I'm trying to get to the button. Well, we're lapsing back into the previous discussion on the message, and I just thought of the picture because again, we can get the forecast perfectly right, and the people still don't know how to respond. And message, we got to work on the message. But I thought of being in a tornado area, and these people know where they're going to go, they know their shelters, they know different things, and so all of a sudden you put out a tornado warning. Your town is going to have a tornado come through. Well, the tornado's not going to affect everybody in the town. But everybody pretty much takes refuge because they know they can't tell the exact street it's going to go up. And that kind of has to be with our message. We have to admit, no matter how good forecasts are, that the overall threat is broad. And I don't know if I want to use the word generic, that's not the right word, but broad and iffy. We cannot tell the exact spots. We have to communicate that part of it. Perfect forecast, but not perfection in exactly what impact they're going to get, just like the tornado thing. You get ready and you'll be happy you got ready. and maybe your house won't be leveled. Thank you. Stan
Yes.
from HRD.
Yeah, Stan, this is Welcome Army, OSTI. Yeah, that's a good point, although I think the timescales involved in hurricanes, if we had an inland wind warning for, the state of Georgia that lasted for 24 hours, it would be hard to convince people to not go in their cars or go outside for all of that time at the off chance that they might get hit by a falling branch. And, unfortunately, it is what it is, but
Well, it's a different time and spatial.
yeah,
scale. I
different
understand
time.
that, but it was just a picture. Here's the generic threat or a specific threat. You're probably going to have a tornado come through your area. You need to respond. It might not affect you, but
Right.
we can't tell you that exactly. But it's enough of a threat that we need to take warning. That's why NHC publishes warning over a large area.
Also need to run a public.
Yeah, point taken.
We're just gonna,
Frank,
we're just
Go
having
ahead.
pasta for dinner.
Are we gonna eat together or are we gonna just do whatever?
And
Let me check on Soul. She was feeling sleepy.
I got him. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, I was going to say another way to look at it is the original HFIP was focused on NHC's goals and objectives, track and intensity, which is a long-term part of the forecast and is a key to the next step, which is the WFO part. And the way I always looked at it was the Weather Act really started to ask us, well, what are you doing for the WFOs? They're the ones who deal with the hazard forecasts at landfall. And so I think another way to think about it is the new HFIP focus is going to be more, what are WFO's big issues?
Thanks, Frank. I'll take this lull to just quickly mention that, these key strategies are the draft strategies in the plan. I don't think these are going to change very much in terms of what the black lettering there. So, I mean, these are the 6 key strategies that have been identified. And so I think we've talked a lot here about verification and improved risk communication. Obviously we talked a lot about modeling, but any comments on any of the other areas? We've had some comments about HPC and AI, and I just want to make sure that we're giving those due diligence as well.
Yeah, so Gus, one comment I would have based on my last comment, you mentioned that we have goals with set objectives. One way to think about it is if we're going to deal with the hazard part, which I agree is not as well done, the communications in particular, maybe we get the WFOs involved in that and tell us what their issues are. And maybe they give us the goals.
That's a great idea. I don't know if we've done enough of that so far. Pablo, go ahead.
Oops, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, Frank just read my mind. Just been trying to remain quiet and listen here, but having that dual perspective, being NSC now, but being the WFO before. That's what are the WFO issues? We talk about decision support, and often in times, NSC is big scare, state, FEMA regions, other federal agencies, right? But when the difficult decisions often are made are at the local community level. And that's where the WFOs live. It's delivering what I call tactical decision support. And the ability to be able to understand how to do risk communication properly, building on all the progress that's been talked about here this week. I mean, realize what you guys are providing is the foundation of everything, right? But when you talk about WFO, it's about risk communication. It's about having the flexibility to have data, reliable data out there that we can data mine. If you really want to empower, deploy, decision support meteorologists out there, you want to empower them, we want to provide them with reliable, probabilistic based data or information that we can data mine and target a specific decision-making thresholds that vary greatly, even sometimes within a community, within a county, within a state. And that's what WFOs face. That's the real challenge. I know that's what Ken thinks when he talks about us living in the EOCs. with the partners. That's what it really is about. I call it tactical decision support. And the more we can do that empower them to do that, the better, without a doubt. It's not really about product generation and none of that. That's really is becoming, as it should be, a thing of the past. It's about creating good data that can empower the delivery of decision support services at a tactical level, at the local community level.
So Pablo, would the WCMs be our best POCs?
It begins with then WCNs and MICs, but yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because in terms of the big science behind all of this foundation, of course, NHC is the bus driver. I certainly understand that, but we cannot forget where the actual service ultimately gets delivered, right, at the local community level. But yeah, that would be WCNs and MICs. Yes.
Thank you, Pablo. Did you have something to add, or you?
Any other comments online or?
Well, I still have like 50 more slides. No, I just.
Oh, okay.
No.
While you're loading up,
there for-
while you're loading up your 500 more slides, that are going to keep people till 7:30 so that you can have happy hour with Gus. I do want to mention that part of the Weather Act specifically states that a lot of these things that they are levying on NOAA and implying that HFIP should do them are documented as there is not funding use existing. And therein lies a lot of the problem with why we're not where the OIG and others think we should be. So each HFIP on a whole is not doing these in a vacuum, considering we have a staff that literally consisted of me until Will came on, and it's us. So we are leveraging all of you in this community. So any of these things can be solved by any of us, probably not individually, as a group. I also want to mention that the strategic plan that's in draft and currently undergoing review of what we're calling a science review, because it's expanded people that were invited to be part of the author team that didn't have the bandwidth to do it at the time that we were writing it. Incorporate people from a lot of varied places within NOAA. GSUN for one, not to call you out or anything, but I know that was one of the things that was brought up as a concern that is not in those key takeaways. Is involved in it. She's actually done a very good job writing sections that are outside of the wheelhouse of most of us. And her and I have already talked just a few minutes ago about, since we work for the same person ultimately and on the same floor, that we will be talking a lot more closely, a lot more often. Andy IDSS lead is one floor below me. So him and I will be getting together a lot more often as well.
That's great to hear. I skipped a few slides in there because they touched on some of the modeling problems. I think we've talked a lot about those. So they're going to be in this presentation for your reference, just sort of a wrap up on that. I think in the interest of time, I think we'll solicit any final comments here. And, I'll say thank you so much for attending. And one of the things that Aaron has done a fantastic job, and Will as well, and all the organizers, I'll say. And, the HFIP community continues to grow. I think, Aaron, if I remember correctly, this meeting is 7 times larger than it was the first meeting.
I went back and looked at the historic documents in our shared folder, and the first HFIP meeting had around 12, maybe 13 people. And this one, when you add our in-person and online, we are at about 150 to 160 or so.
Wow.
Maybe slightly higher.
I brought mics to my home to do the HFIP.
And I have it here, but I think it just goes to show, there's the fantastic work that everyone's doing and this unwavering dedication of everyone involved. And even in the face of limited resources, I think we're still trying to find pathways forward and set our strategies so that when we could justify more resources, and that can help us get to our goals more effectively. If you just press the arrow one more time, I'll say too, next, now on to the next challenge for folks going to the airport or going into traffic. So that may be a short-term diversion from these issues into other ones. So,
and I just want to say that since I started working with all of you guys in April of 2022, we've added about 100 people to not only this meeting, but just to our regular monthly seminars. We're almost double the size of what it was not less than 3 years ago. So that's a testament to the reach of HFIP and the fact that the SFS that's being stood up and has more money than us, is developing community based on HFIP as the model. And UFS was actually designing their community model, not the model of as in NWP, but as in growing the community on what HFIP has done since its inception. And that's because most of you guys have been here way longer than me, especially people like Gopal and Frank and VJ and Avishal and others like that. So thank you. And hopefully we can continue to be important to the mission and keep going through whatever may come. And with that, as Gus said, on to your next challenge, whether it be sit here and have happy hour to wait for traffic to die or fight through it. Go forth, do great things, and be awesome. Thank you.